and welcome back to the panel. Tonight, we welcome Mr. Graham Jackson, Director of the Civil Service College. Graham came to the Cayman Islands in 2015, having previously served as the Director of Human Resources for the Falkland Islands government. He joined the Management Support Unit, which is an internal consultancy unit within the portfolio of the Civil Service. In 2021, he was appointed Director of the Civil Service College and leads a small team delivering learning and development opportunities for civil servants. Graham is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, a fellow of the Institute of Leadership and Management, and member of the Association of Project Management. This is his third British Overseas Territory, in addition to having held senior roles in UK government departments, Scottish Government, and the UK National Health Service. In 2021, he was awarded the certificate and the badge of honor to recognize his contribution to the National Emergency Operations Center during the COVID pandemic. Welcome to the panel, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Okay, thank you. We also want to welcome our co-hosts, Mr. Roy Budden and Mr. Mario Banks. Mr. Roy Budden is a former Cayman Islands legislator and government minister. He's also a former president of the University College of the Cayman Islands and is a highly respected historian and academic. Mr. Mario E. Banks is a former senior government official, director of labor and pensions, and former manager of the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce. He's a businessman, a human resource professional, and a knowledgeable public affairs commentator. Tonight, we put the spotlight on the Civil Service College and its achievements. Mr. Jackson, introduce us to the college by speaking about its formation and background, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, unless you're a civil servant, you might not have heard of the Civil Service College. It was established back in 2007 with the aim of improving skills and competencies for civil servants. Now, up until about 2018, its primary focus was on helping civil servants achieve associate degrees, and this was very much in partnership with UCCI. This is really important because the absence of an associate degree can actually be a barrier to progression, to advancement, and to promotion to higher level positions within the civil service. So by creating a program that gives people that second chance to return to education actually meant people could really improve themselves, but also progress. The program has been a really great success, typically turning out between 12 and 20 graduates every year. And if we fast forward to the launch of the Deputy Governor's 5-year strategic plan for the civil service, that was in 2018, our focus in the Civil Service College has really expanded, and that's to address the need for increased competencies in areas like leadership and management, but also to make sure that every single civil servant, and there's over 4,000 of them, to make sure every one of them has access to core competency training and development to support them. Now, I am delighted to be on the program this evening. My aim of coming on the program is actually to celebrate the significant successes we've had in the last couple of years. We've achieved record-breaking levels of achievement. And if I think of the leadership and management program specifically, we saw about 30 students graduate in 2019 with internationally recognized qualifications. By 2020, we'd accelerated that to 100 graduates. And last year, we celebrated 150 leadership and management graduates within the civil service. Our journey hasn't ended. Our aim is to make sure that within the next couple of years, every single manager and leader in the civil service has a recognized qualification. At the end of the day, you wouldn't let someone drive a car unless they were qualified and competent. So our leaders and managers running government business really need to be competent for those tasks. So that's the sort of background to where we are. Unless you've been in the civil service, you've probably not heard of us. We're a very small team. There's only 6 of us. We have no physical premises or assets. So we're very economical, very efficient, and we go to where the demand is. And with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions and be with you this evening.
Thank you. Before I turn over to my co-host, one simple question. How motivated are the employees of the government and those who have achieved those results?
It's been mixed. At the start of the program, we were consistent in turning around that 12 to 30 number. A lot of those students were tied into the associate degree program. So there was a an incentive for them to complete the leadership and management component. We focused on the early adopters, the people that really wanted to do this to generate the success, and that's really played dividends, because now we're in the fortunate situation of actually having a waiting list of people that want to do it. So we've reached that tipping point now where people actually recognize this is something worthwhile, this is something important. If I can give you one example, Ralph, last year, 40 police officers undertook the leadership and management training. Many of them have now been successful in terms of their sergeant's promotion or their inspector promotion. So seeing that advancement and progression within an organization like the police service is absolutely fundamental. And I think that's an area that's previously been critical of officers who haven't been able to progress and got very frustrated. But just putting on that little bit of training and development has actually helped them progress and advance relatively quickly.
Okay, thank you, Graham. And Mr. Bodden is a former educator and one of our co-hosts right here, and I'm sure he has lots of comments or questions to ask. Mr. Roy, can I ask you first to just pitch in here and speak to this topic?
Well, the first question I would like to ask Graham is that you speak about the leadership and management program. Does that mean that there is a de-emphasis on civil servants and the associate degree courses of study?
There is a slight change of emphasis with the associate degree program. So it's been a really successful program. The challenge we've got with the associate degree program is that it's been so successful over the years that we're actually running out of students. So the success has resulted in us having to change that program a little bit. So it's still available. There's a cohort going through at the moment, and they should finish their studies in September, October time this year. But we've also enhanced our program with a diploma in professional administration, which is at the same level of associate degree, but is much more vocationally based. So civil servants taking that route actually do work that's more aligned to the work they would do in an office environment. And it's assessed using the actual work they produce at work. So it's less of an academic slant. So for example, they don't study English to the same degree as the associate degree students, but what they do study is effective business communications. So we've got another program running in parallel at the moment, which will actually take over from the associate degree, but the associate degree program will still be there for those that want to do it.
Okay. So I also wanted to ask, seeing that you cater largely, well, the Civil Service College exclusively to civil servants, what about courses in public administration?
Yeah, well, as I said, we've got our diploma in public and professional administration, which is running. That's again is a City and Guilds endorsed program, because the Civil Service College, we're actually a City and Guilds accredited training centre. So all the qualifications we deliver to civil servants are internationally recognised, which means if they get the equivalent of an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or the credits for it, they can actually take those credits to any international university, and then they can progress and advance their studies, not necessarily in areas of public and professional administration, but they can use the leadership and management components pretty much for any specialist degree in any specialist topic that has a management component. So our aim is to make sure civil servants are actually maximizing the learning they've got. And when they move on and advance their studies, they're not duplicating or repeating just simply because they haven't studied it with a particular institution. And that's being really well received. So we've got, I know, at least 2 students that are actually transferring now to courses with the University of Miami. And because they've done the City and Guilds program, a lot of the modules they've also already got credit for. So they're not starting from scratch, they're just advancing their studies.
Sounds good.
Okay, but now I turn to Mr. Mario for a few questions.
Yes, I want to welcome Graham to the panel. I've known him for a number of years, and we did a lot of good work together when I was at the Airports Authority, and even before that. And he was very instrumental in having the Airports Authority staff acquire the ILM certification, the level 2, level 3 I think some even did level 5, and hopefully that work is still continuing. So Graham did a lot of great work there. So I thank him. I also want to wish all of the Irish people a happy St. Patrick's Day. I know Graham is Scottish, but still, I'm sure he'll share in that. And I wear my green tonight because of in honor of the Irish people. But Mr. Roy asked about the other programs, the associate degree programs, and I believe that the ILM, for example, I'm not sure if I think it's level 3. And you can correct me on this, Graham, but I think once you get that, it kind of is equivalent almost to an associate degree. And I believe there's some equivalency matriculation for that. But the question I have is, you say you got 4,000 civil servants. So all of those folks have access to the civil service college then? Is there a qualification requirement? Or they have to basically just be referred to it based on a development plan? And is there any kind of fee? Do they have to pay a fee, or is it waived, or it's all internal book transfers?
Okay. If I start with your comment about the airport authority, I mean, that was incredible work when we did it, and it was fantastic to work in that environment with that functional setting. And at the time, I remember you were going through the start of that transition from the old airport to the new airport. And to be able to do that with such an enthusiastic group of managers and leaders and take them on that journey of training was incredible. And if I fast forward to the COVID period, when I was deployed with the National Emergency Operations Centre, it was fantastic to turn up at the airport and see some friendly faces and welcoming faces. And it actually made the emergency operations flow much easier and much faster. So that was a stroke of genius, Mario, in terms of you inviting me in at the time to do that training, and it actually paid dividends after the training was finished. So that was fantastic.
Thank you.
In terms of the ILM and its linked with the associate's degree, you're right in terms of there is a link. The ILM Level 3 program actually makes up part of the credits towards their associate degree. So the Civil Service College teaches the leadership and management component, and those credits are transferred into the UCCI component to make up the total degree. So it's a partnership that we operate with UCCI, and that's been very, very successful. In terms of access for our 4,000 civil servants, we don't typically charge fees for civil servants. We provide the training through our budget, and we focus on areas that are common across the whole of the civil service. So our budget last year was just under $1 million. Civil servants don't pay a fee to do our ILM programs. Every civil servant in core government has access 24/7 to our online learning portal. It's actually provided by LinkedIn Learning. So, you know, the people that do the professional networking site, they also do learning and development. So every civil servant in government at the moment has access to thousands of on-demand training products. And we've aligned them all to our core competency framework. So whatever they're doing at whatever level, there's learning and development available to them that they can do at their own pace whenever they want to. It's also in bite-sized chunks. So if they need to learn something really quickly, for example, as a new manager, say you're doing a performance review tomorrow morning, they can go online and immediately get help and advice in terms of what do they need to do to make that performance discussion meaningful and worthwhile. We only launched LinkedIn Learning about a year ago. It's already proved its worth. We've got 2,000 active learners on that system at this point in time. So we're probably actually the biggest provider of further education with the biggest student base on island at the moment. Yet the majority of the island has probably never heard of us.
Yeah, that's good. That's why Ralph invited you on here, so we can expand the knowledge base. I want to just have one more additional question before I give way to Mr. Roy. He asked about the other programs, the bachelor's or the associate's program, but what about the sort of technical and vocational type programs, the TVET type programs for the more technical and entry-level people and those that are working in the technical fields within government, do you also offer kind of TVET programs in the syllabus or in the programs for the college?
In the Civil Service College, we tend to focus on what's common across the whole of the civil service, which is why we've got the focus on things like professional administration, leadership, management, and the core competency framework. We do have vocational programs running in other departments. So, for example, the Public Works Department has programs running as part of their apprenticeship scheme. They're also a City and Guilds accredited centre. And we've got other departments and ministries that take the lead on certain aspects of training. So, for example, training for accountants is led by the Ministry of Finance. What we do in the Civil Service College in those instances is try and pull together data, numbers, and signpost. But our focus is really at the common areas across government.
Okay. Before I go back to Mr. Roy, I have a question regarding age groups, Graham. I believe knowledge is power, and I'm sure we all do. And growing up in my career in banking, I took my banking diploma in my later years in my career. Can you speak to the age groups that have participated in the college? And can you say whether the older folks or more senior folks have welcomed it and are embracing it?
It's completely mixed. And that's one of the challenges we have in the classroom environment, is that we can be dealing with 17 and 18-year-olds at one level, and in the same class be dealing with older students with a whole range of education backgrounds. Our ethos in the Civil Service College is that if they're willing to give it a go, then we will find a way to accommodate them and take them through the learning. Our other ethos is we try not to leave any students behind. So because we're not so commercial focused in terms of our training business, we can actually provide bespoke and tailored support to all learners. So sometimes we get cases where people haven't got the education background at the level we'd expect. It might take them a little bit longer to get through our programs. But we've got that flexibility within our system. So we leave nobody behind. We take anybody that's willing to do it. At the moment, we've got a bit of a waiting list for our leadership and management programs. So we are prioritizing leaders and managers who are actually in leadership and management positions, as opposed to those aspiring to be in leadership and management positions. But basically, if they're keen and they're interested, they can access, and there's no cost to them. The only time we talk about costs is if the student decides after starting a program to withdraw and we don't like the reason they've given. One of the issues we had when I first started here was this excuse of pressure of work. Sorry, we're too busy at work, therefore we can't complete our studies and do leadership and management training, so we have to withdraw. Now, we don't accept that as an excuse, especially from people who are aspiring to be leaders and managers. So part of the deal in signing up for the training is that they have to have the support of their leader and manager, and they have to make time for it and prioritize it. And again, that's paying dividends. We're seeing a lot more support being given to the people that now commence the training. So really, really good.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Roy.
Right. My question is, what is going to happen when you have built up a significant cadre of graduates, of students who have matriculated from the leadership and management courses? What is the future?
Well, one of the things, one of the success measures is, do we see a difference in the performance of the civil service? So that's the first measure of success in terms of delivering the learning and development. And already we're seeing correlations. For example, we do an annual engagement survey. We survey 4,000 people. We get an independent research company to do it, so it's anonymous. And we can already start to make correlations between the departments that are making investment in leadership and management and the higher engagement scores. And we've also started to correlate that with our customer service feedback. So you may have seen things like the happy or not terminals in the post offices. We can start to see the correlation between improved levels of leadership and management leading to improved levels of staff engagement, morale, and motivation, and improve customer service. So that's the short-term gain in terms of improvement in the civil service. The longer-term aim, well, I don't think learning and development ever stops. I think if we stand still on education and learning and development, the world will overtake us at an incredible pace. So the whole aspect of continuous professional development needs to kick in. But on our programs, we don't just take them at the level 2 and 3 level. As Mario said, we go to level 5 on the leadership management programs. We also go up to level 7, which is the equivalent to the master's degree now within the Civil Service College. So it never stops, it never ends, and we've got to continually refresh those people. I would guess at the moment we're probably halfway in having every manager with a recognized qualification. We're probably halfway. I suspect over the next year or two, it will get harder and harder to get to that last group of people, the most resistant people. So that will take quite a bit of effort. But the other thing that's happening in the civil service is people are constantly being refreshed. So every now and again, people leave, some of them move to the private sector, people retire. So there's a constant influx of new people and new talent. And the training and development has to match their career journey throughout.
So you have said that you do not take as an excuse for not completing a course pressure of work. So my question is, what is the attrition rate?
Yeah, on the leadership management programs, we do have a small attrition rate, and it's getting smaller. I think when I started getting involved with the leadership management program, that was 4 years ago, our attrition rate was about 55%. That has now eroded to it's now about 10%. Now, the reality of our programs is we go through an orientation and an induction process right at the start to make sure that the program is the right program for them. So in the first period of the program, they can actually withdraw, and that's included in our attrition rate. It might be they don't want to do the training with me because of my annoying Scottish accent. That's absolutely fine. We can align them with somebody else. It might be that they realize the level of study and the amount of effort is not for them. Therefore, it's okay to withdraw. But once they start the programs, our retention rate and our success rate is getting higher and higher and higher. But I have some sympathy for people that live in the real world. Sometimes real things do get in the way. Sometimes personal circumstances get in the way. Health conditions can get in the way. We still try not to leave them behind, and we still follow up on those people. And we have seen some success in that area as well, in that we've brought people back who've withdrawn, and we've got them started again on subsequent cohorts. So it's a journey that never ends.
So my final question in this tranche is it that promotion to the next level is entirely incumbent upon success in this leadership and management program? Or that is just one in a number of criteria?
In the past, people have been able to progress and advance within the civil service without management and leadership qualifications. So traditionally, if you were the best technical expert and you were next in line, potentially you could become the manager of those technical experts. So for example, if you're the best electrician, you could suddenly become the manager of electricians. The challenge with that is, you may not have received any training or any development in terms of leading and managing people. And we saw many instances of people reaching leadership and management positions and really struggling. They weren't always given the support they need. They weren't given the coaching and the mentoring, and some of them just weren't given the training. Now, the training and development in leadership and management isn't difficult. It's not complex. Leadership and management theories and practice has been around for a long time. It is continuing to evolve, but giving people that little bit of knowledge and how to get the best out of people can make a tremendous difference. And I really applaud the Deputy Governor when he said, if you're going to manage civil servants in the civil service, then you must be competent to do that. And that 5-year aspiration of having every manager in the civil service competent and qualified is one that we really need to follow through. You wouldn't let a civil servant drive a car if they didn't have a driving license. You wouldn't let them drive the same vehicle if you hadn't made them familiar with it. So why would we let unqualified people lead our civil servants?
Okay, so this brings me now to a logical question, which is a follow-on to your argument. Do you give any credit for prior learning?
Absolutely. In that journey to make sure every manager in the civil service is qualified at an appropriate level, we do recognize other learning. We recognize that across the world, there's other institutions that deliver leadership and management training. So our key is making sure that people are at the right level, not necessarily sheep dipped through the civil service college. But it's a big ask, but it's about, are we confident that these people can actually manage our people? We invest a lot of money in our staff. I think the average salary in the civil service is around that 35,000, 40,000 mark. The average car is probably a lot less than that. And we seem to invest a lot more in making sure people can drive than actually driving our workforce to deliver better outcomes for citizens. But it's good that the tide is turning. People are really enthusiastic about it. People have really grabbed it. And actually, we're getting a lot of repeat business now from the managers that have attended so far. And they're now encouraging their staff to attend. And we can see the eureka moments. People telling us, why did nobody tell us how to do this before? If only we'd known that this was an approach we could take. Some of our managers, the only experience they've got is the experience of being managed by their previous manager. And if that manager wasn't trained and only learned by experience, we've actually got techniques and approaches that can really help people. We've got different approaches to leadership, not one style of leadership, but lots of styles of leadership that can be applied in different circumstances and in different environments. So I had a session this morning, there was a couple of police officers in it, having the conversation that actually we don't always need to be in a command and control style of leadership with our police officers. Yes, it works really well in an emergency, but actually maybe we could try a coaching style of leadership in some situations. Maybe we could try a supportive leadership approach. And just by showing people that there's different approaches is almost liberating and giving them the freedom to try different things in a different way. And it does seem to be making a big difference.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. And we'll come back to you in a few. Mario, the floor is yours.
I want to ask a couple of deep technical questions now, Graham, and we don't want to bore our viewers, but I know that you and I can talk a lot of stuff about HR. So I just want to dig into two technical issues. You mentioned that the training is aligned to the competency framework within the civil service. And I assume that competency framework would also cover some soft skills areas such as communication and team building and interpersonal skills and stuff like that, presentation skills and stuff like that. So who provides that kind of training? Is that something the Civil Service College does as well, or is it some other organization that does that? And then the second part of that first question is, how then does the data from the Civil Service College, how is that progressed within the life cycle of an employee to inform employee development and succession planning? So how does this whole spectrum come together?
Yeah. In terms of our competency framework, we've got a bespoke framework that we designed in-house for the civil service. That was about 3 years ago. It's very simple. I think it's on our public-facing website for anyone that wants to see it. There's 3 components to our competency framework. The first is delivering results. So what are the attributes around delivering results to benefit the public? The second part is about working together. So that's some of the soft skills about relationship building and how do we work effectively across teams, departments, ministries, and the wider community. And the third part of our competency framework is about building capability. So this idea of continually developing and recognizing that we have to continue to develop. Our competency framework works on 3 levels. So we've got our individual contributors, we've got our managers and supervisors, and we've got our strategic directors. It's probably the simplest competency framework in existence. We looked at lots of different competency frameworks when we were designing it, but we deliberately went down the let's keep it simple route in the hope that we could embed it over 3 or 4 years, get people used to working within a competency framework, help them understand the links between the framework, training and development, and performance management, and then we can start to refine it and develop it and enhance it. Now, in terms of who delivers that training, it's mixed. The Civil Service College provides resources against the competency framework. A lot of that training is delivered online and on demand. So for example, if you're a manager and you want to develop your working together skills, you go to the online portal, you figure out the bit you want to do, and then you do it there and then. We also offer some classroom-based workshops. That's usually in modules where we're trying to challenge behaviors or challenge assumptions. So we like to do that face-to-face as opposed to online. And then you've got training that's department specific. So in addition to the Civil Service College budget, every department has training development funds that they can prioritize both for their functional needs, their professional needs, but also to enhance things like team development. I think the last time I looked, the total government expenditure on learning and development is about $4 million. That's probably the figures from the year before last. So sounds a lot of money, but spread across 80 different departments that make up the civil service, it's not a lot of money. I think the benchmarks, Mario, you might know better than me. The benchmark is typically something like up to 4% of salary costs in a world-class company should be invested in learning and development. I think our statistic at the moment is about 1 or 2%. So we could do with a little bit more investment in learning and development across the civil service, but we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you. One second of my technical questions. You mentioned that and thank you for your very good answer in the previous question as well. You could talk about that for hours, I know, but you mentioned that you track the effectiveness of the Civil Service College programs and the training programs that are addressing the kind of common competency framework through the annual, I believe it's annual engagement survey. Yeah. Are there other metrics that you check as well to track the effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, we use the classic approach in terms of learning and evaluation. So we get the immediate reaction from students in terms of how did they find the training program or the online learning. So we measure that. I think we all know that that's limited in terms of the data and the information you get. Typically, people will tell you that the training room was either too hot, too cold, or they could do with more tea or coffee. What's more valuable is the feedback from line managers in terms of, has the person changed their approach, their behavior? Has there been a difference in the delivery? So that feedback is really, really valuable, and we're getting better and better feedback from line managers on that. We also get feedback through the engagement survey in terms of, do people believe they've got access to the right learning and development to help them in their job? And also, do they believe they've got access to training and development that will help them in their career? So 2 key measures of perception. And those measures have been increasing year on year over the last 4 years. So while it's only a measure of perception, if 4,000 people believe it's getting better, both in terms of skills for work and their career, then something must be happening that's really, really good. The other aspect of that then is looking at, well, if people do training and development, does it actually help them advance and progress? And we're seeing early data now that can make that correlation between people being successful on training and development, and then we're getting feedback from interview panels saying those people are actually doing really well in interviews and they're being successful at securing those positions. So as I say, we saw it with the police. They were probably the biggest cohort that went through last year. And we've seen some of those people that were previously really frustrated at not getting through the exams for promotion to sergeant, now having success through that same process, just because we've given them an insight into, well, actually, what is leadership? What is management? How might you approach some of these situations, as opposed to how you've seen the movies display how senior police officers might operate, actually giving them some real skills. So the success is coming. We're still at an early stage in terms of the data. I want to refine that data even more. I want to be able to say that every dollar we spend on learning development makes a direct impact on somebody's life in the Cayman Islands, but we're still a little bit away from that.
Just a follow up then, Graham. So how does a civil servant apply to get into one of the civil service college program? Can they apply, or do they have to be referred by their line manager or supervisor?
It can be either. On some programs, the individual decides they want to do it. And for the online learning, any civil servant can access that training at any time. As long as they've got their email address and their password, they don't even need to be on the government network to access that. They can access it at home or wherever they want on mobile devices. It doesn't matter. For the more formal classroom training where they have to come away from their place of work, they need to get their line manager's permission and their line manager's agreement. Where it's a requirement of the job, so if they're actually in a management or a leadership position and they don't have the qualification, our expectation is that they will be released from their place of work to do that training. For aspiring managers, it's more of a negotiation and a discussion with the manager. We do sometimes get involved where an individual isn't very happy that their manager isn't releasing them. That usually provokes a bit of a discussion, and usually we reach a compromise or a way of the individual actually accessing the learning.
Are they bonded? Are they bonded or not?
It's a discussion we have frequently and often. We don't do it at the moment, and my personal view is I don't want there to be any barriers to civil servants having a go at trying to progress and advance. And there's always a risk that if someone doesn't feel that confident, the idea of having some sort of bond might put them off even applying. I don't want that to be the case. I want them to come in and have a go. If they're struggling, we'll try and find a way of supporting them. If they don't get through it, we'll let them take a break and we'll try and bring them back. One of the criticisms sometimes from managers is, well, what if they get this qualification as a success? Because if they leave the civil service, they're likely to be going into employment in the private sector in the Cayman Islands, and they can use those skills and talents to help that private sector organization create more economic benefit for the country. So the country actually doesn't lose in this deal.
And sorry, Mario.
I was going to give way to Dr. Roy, but if he want to give way to me for one final question in this tranche, as he calls it,
go right ahead. Go right ahead, Mario.
This is not necessarily a technical. This is kind of looking for your opinion, because you've worked in different countries and you've actually interacted with different cultures and whatnot. But do you see any differences, Graham, in the predisposition towards training while you work in Cayman civil servants compared to civil servants in other countries that you have worked in?
I think the picture's mixed. In some jurisdictions I've worked, it's much more a requirement of managers to require their staff to access learning and development. So it's a given that if you're a civil servant in a government department, there's an absolute expectation that the organization should be funding you to do training and development to be the best that you could possibly can be. In some jurisdictions, it's a bit more restrictive, and they have arrangements where actually maybe the employee pays something towards the training. Sometimes they have to pay for all of it. Here in Cayman, I think we've got different views and attitudes in different areas of the civil service. But I think people are slowly coming around to the fact that training and development isn't a luxury. It's something we have to do in order to be the best civil service we can be. If we're going to provide world-class services to the public, then we need to invest in civil servants. And it's also about that economic benefit for them. So if they're in a civil service role and we provide learning and development that helps them advance and progress within the service, it means we're keeping that knowledge and that experience, but we're also helping them gain more economic wealth. And if we help them gain more economic wealth, it might actually be a benefit to their children if they're parents. Because if the children see these adults going back to school effectively, getting qualifications and at delivering success, it might mean those children are more inclined to stick in at school, do better at education, and actually deliver a better economic advantage for them and their families. And ultimately, the Cayman Islands must benefit from that exercise. I don't know if you saw some of the posts we put on LinkedIn this week. We've started a pilot with Clifton Hunter High School. So the Civil Service College doesn't typically provide training to children. We only provide to civil servants. But we've started a pilot at Clifton Hunter to try and see if we can get school pupils interested in leadership and management. And I went along last week to see how they were getting on. And there were 30 super enthusiastic and motivated school children doing the ILM Level 2 program. Wow. Incredible to see. And the Level 2 is what we would look at for aspiring supervisors and managers. And imagine if these school leavers now leave school and decide to come into the civil service and into entry-level positions. They've already got a massive head start. They've done some of the training that we would deliver before they've even started in the job. That's incredible. If they go off to college and university, fantastic. Again, they've got some key skills that are going to help them in that environment, but also when they come to the workplace. So my hope with that pilot program is that in a couple of months' time, we'll see 20 or 30 students graduate with their ILM Level 2 awards. And then we'll be able to do a rollout of that program so that if any school in the Cayman Islands or any youth organization wants to introduce recognized leadership and management training, we will give them the tools to do it. It's not something we can continue to do in the Civil Service College, but we want to give them a pack of material that will let them run that for themselves in their own school or their own youth group. And I think that would, again, be a massive success for the Cayman Islands and young Caymanians.
Good move, good move. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Graham. Actually, you did answer some of those questions that I had holding. And thank you, Mario, for asking those questions. Before we go on to Dr. Roy, in previous discussions, we spoke about lost opportunities that the country as a whole did not take advantage of when we experienced COVID. We were shut down for quite some time, and there are many opportunities for some people to retool themselves, train themselves. And my question is, did the students of the Civil Service College use that opportunity to educate themselves?
The COVID period was really, really interesting. So at the start of COVID, the Civil Service College went into a state of actually, we can no longer run face-to-face training. And some of that is because our training room in the government admin building actually becomes the National Emergency Operations Centre. So we actually lost our physical venue right at the start of COVID. And me and some of my team, we actually then take on roles in the emergency setup. But what actually happened during COVID is we rolled a lot of our learning material into online formats. And our team that weren't directly involved in the emergency response started supporting the online communities. And during 2020, we actually saw an increase in the amount of people accessing learning and development. So I think as a lot of people went home and were working remotely, they were actually able to better manage their work life and their time and their capacity to the extent they could actually do a lot of online training and development. So it was a real opportunity for those that couldn't contribute during COVID to actually upskill themselves. One of the upsides of that is I think we need to rethink the way we deliver training and education going forward. And I think we're going to see a massive transition especially in the higher education sector in terms of the way people learn. So for example, the days of bringing students into a room to give them a lecture for an hour or 2 hours, actually, we know we can record that and deliver it on YouTube. Where we can add the value is now bringing people into the room with that knowledge and challenge the behaviors, challenge the assumptions, and make it much more practical. And I think we need to see that carry over into the further education sector. I do wonder if we need to see that also happen in schools. And I say that because I've got 2 teenage children. And when they come home with their homework of an evening, I'm finding it harder and harder to help them with it. And when Rebecca came home a few nights ago with something called calculus homework, I really had to rack my brain to figure out, how do I help? And I had to make an excuse to run away and get onto Google to remind myself what some of these things were before I could help. And I'm wondering if maybe the classroom type sessions could be delivered on YouTube, and maybe the teachers in the classroom could actually help them with the homework. Maybe that would be a revolution that we might start seeing. But it would be good to hear some of the panel views on whether actually that's maybe an approach we need to think about.
Okay, well, I'll turn it right over to Dr. Roy.
Yeah, it certainly is. That is an international recognized best practice, and you wouldn't be doing yourself any disfavor by pursuing that route. And if I have a recommendation for the next time any of your children come home and stump you with some homework, you might want to check the Khan Academy. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, they use the Khan Academy.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic resource.
My question is, you painted a pretty rosy picture of your success, and I have no doubt I'm impressed with what you have offered, and I just want to put you on notice that I'll be pursuing it and scrutinizing it, and when you come back, if I find any holes in it, you will have to account for them. I want to ask you, have you encountered any challenges to what you are trying to do? And if so, how did you deal with them? For example, one of the weaknesses I think in many Caymanian young person, not only young persons, it is a characteristic of the Caymanian character that they are very reticent if they are in unfamiliar territory, and they defeat themselves before even trying. For example, many Caymanians have a phobia of mathematics, and yet if they're coached and goaded, they are usually average or above. What challenges have you encountered in what you're trying to do in the Civil Service College with improving qualifications?
Yeah, there's a number of challenges. One is we've got a group of people who are really set in their ways. They've perhaps been in roles for quite a long time. So actually what that can do is create a fear of going back to a classroom. They're not sure about their ability to write papers, perhaps. They're not sure they actually want to expose themselves in terms of letting people know they don't know about leadership and management, especially if they've been in a leadership and management position for 10, 20, 30 years. So some of what we're trying to do is make it safe for those people to come back into the room. Some of it's about branding. So we've got some senior leaders programs. So even though they're being delivered at a level 3, we're actually wrapping them up in a format that's suitable for very senior managers. So trying to make it safe for them to access that learning. We've also introduced some programs which are free to access evening programs. So people don't need their manager's permission to attend. But if they want to brush up on their written English skills, they can come to the evening session, they can drop in, and actually through that route, we can take them all the way through to a CXC or a GCSE in English. That's a program we're actually converting now. And by the end of this year, it'll be a City and Guilds qualification at GCSE level. So we're trying to make these safe access routes. At one point, we were calling it the after work poker club, just to make it safe for people to say they were going somewhere where everybody knew what it was, but they had an excuse to actually turn up and seek help and support in a safe way. So we're doing some of that. The other challenge we've got is sometimes people don't know what they don't know. And if they think they know it all, they can be quite resistant to learning. I'm not a big fan of mandating training and development, but I am pleased that the DG has actually set this target of everybody having that level of recognition. We're still a little bit off it, and I'm not focused on the hard to get group yet, but if we can create a tipping point where the majority of people actually have it and have achieved it and have lived to tell the tale, I'm hoping that more of the hard to reach people will start to come on board. And one of the criticisms in training from some of the managers is, I wish my manager had done this training, or I wish my manager was here. We do have a conversation with those people in terms of, well, what can you do to influence the situation? Sometimes they tip us off and we'll have a conversation with those managers, but some of it is about how do we make it safe for them to access it? So lots of ways of doing that. The real big challenge we've got is meeting demand. We're a really small unit. We're 6 people trying to deliver a lot of programs. One of the ways I'm tackling that at the moment is we're trying to find the best managers in the organization, and we're offering to train them as trainers. So if we can find the best managers, we can train them to train people. We're having some success with that. It's mixed at the moment. Pressure of the work always seems to get in the way, but I've now got a group of 3 people who've taken that up. For the school program, we've got 2 school teachers, Miss Holgate and Miss Virgo, who've grabbed that program, and all we're doing is chaperoning them and trying to point them in the right direction, because they actually have the skills and the knowledge to do it. They just need the resources, the material, and the support. So if we can maximize that across the civil service, we should start to spread our reach much, much further than this tiny little group of 6 people in an office in the government admin building.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. I thought that you might have mentioned also one of your challenges, and I'm not going to ask you this because we promised not to ask you any political questions, but with the public authorities law, how that is structured and mandates that people have to go through a sort of competitive recruitment process and also a competitive process for promotions. And so if I've been hearing from civil servants in my previous role in the public sector, and also now as a consultant and doing some work for public sector organizations, hear the feedback. Some employees are reluctant to train because they say, well, why should I train? Because I can't get promoted, even if I'm kind of earmarked, because I still have to go through the competitive promotion recruitment process. So I don't want you to answer this if you can't, but it seems to be another challenge as well that could be something material.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there, Mario. One is, I do think it's a bit defeatist if people are saying they're not going to do learning and development for fear of not then being successful in a promotion type interview. What we're seeing is people who are going through the learning and development are getting the skills to be able to answer the questions in that interview environment. And we're giving them the structure to approach that and giving them the confidence that they can be successful. So yeah, a little bit defeatist if that's what they're saying. We've also got within the civil service succession planning. So we have some posts where somebody can start in a role, and be on a succession plan where actually over a period of time, there'll be some milestones and some gateways. And as long as they meet those gateways and those milestones, they can be promoted to that role. In fact, I've got one at the moment, which hopefully will get advertised in the not too distant future for a trainee trainer. So I recognize that leadership and management trainers are quite rare because they have to have a lot of leadership management experience and they have to have training and development experience. But we believe we'll be able to bring in somebody more junior and less experienced, have them deliver some of the skills and soft skills type training, and then over a period of time, give them the confidence and the experience to become leadership and management trainers. So that would be a succession plan post that we're hoping to bring in and bring some people on. We have found when we've recruited for trainers specifically that we really, really struggle in the local market. We've got an advert, actually there might even be an advert out in the Compass tomorrow for another trainer post. I would love people in Cayman with leadership management experience to get interested in that post and apply for it, because it's completely possible. We can train people to be trainers, but we need people to come in with the leadership and management experience. We've got a bit of a sterile approach to recruitment here. As you know, Mario, I'm one that sometimes bucks the trend here. So in any advert I put out, you'll always see a bit of small print at the bottom of the advert that says, if you would like a discussion about this role before you apply, pick up the phone, send me an email, and let's have a conversation. Because I want people to come and talk to us before they apply. Because sometimes we miss out on people for the reasons you've explained. They don't think they're going to be successful. Well, come and have a conversation with us. Come and have a coffee with us. Let us tell you about the job. Let us tell you about the role. Let's make sure it's a two-way conversation. And if we think we can train and develop you, we will. For me, it's about getting people with the right attitude and the right behaviors. We can train people to do stuff.
Yep. Amen.
Well, we know final 3 minutes, and do any of my co-hosts have any pressing questions that we would like to ask Graham before we say goodbye?
Well, I just want to thank Graham for being here and being very candid and very, very informed. So thank you very much. Ralph, the question I have is really for you, and it's really to do with next week. We have the cruise ships coming back to the island, and I'm not sure if government is planning a press briefing to reassure the public about the protocols in relation to, safety, health and safety, because as you know, the new subvariant of Omicron, the BA2, is starting to rage in Europe and the US and China, of course. Yes. So we have to not be careful. So I'm just asking that question to you to see whether you're going to push the government to come out and say something and kind of reassure people, and also talk about these protocols for people in the front lines of the tourism industry. And the final thing I want to say is I want to leave our viewers with, since it's St. Patrick's Day, with the Irish blessing as follows. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mario. Just to quickly answer, there'll be a press briefing which will be recorded at 10 a.m. and it'll be replayed on the radio at 1 p.m. I think the government are traveling over to the BRAC for some events, so there'll be a press briefing regarding the arrival of the cruise ship and protocols. I understand it should be held tomorrow. It will be broadcast at 1 p.m. So listeners could tune in that way. Also, we plan to have someone from the ministry next week on the panel talking about what has happened with the first cruise ship arrivals, and so we'll have that done very soon. But before I give my final words, Roy, anything you'd like to say at this point?
Well, I just want to say to Mr. Graham that I was impressed with his performance, and I just want to remind him that I'll be doing my own investigation, testing his credibility, and so perhaps the next time comes around, we'll see. But I'm impressed, and I wish you well. I wish you well, sir.
Here, here.
Thank you. Well, Graham, I want to thank you very much for coming on. I've learned quite a bit, and we'd like to invite you again to come back to give a follow-up report. Just to let us know how things have developed. But before I let you have the final say, Graham, I'd like to congratulate all those civil servants who have achieved their passes and qualifications, and also those who are on the journey. And I encourage every single civil servant to register at your college, because knowledge is power, and the investment that we make in our people will carry Cayman Islands forward. Mr. Graham, off to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Roy, for that praise. I will take that, and happy to stand up to the scrutiny that I look forward to. I have an awesome team. It's a small team. Let me just say, I am dependent on my team. Monique, Zoe, Peter, Joanna, Marie, our volunteer tutors, Lance, Allison, Jennifer, the Clifton Hunter team, Miss Holgate and Miss Virgo. They are awesome people, really trying to make a difference. In the time I've been in the Cayman Islands, the civil service is changing. It is evolving. I am seeing the difference. I'm seeing the passion. I'm seeing the energy. I hope the public can see the change and the difference. And I know sometimes people get frustrated, and sometimes you have to stand in line a little bit longer than you would want to. But actually, the feedback we're getting is getting better and better and better. I get a lot of support from my chief officer, Miss Gloria McField Nixon, from the deputy governor. But Ralph, you're absolutely right. Today is really about celebrating the success of those students and those that have actually taken that difficult step to study, do the hard work, sacrifice the time from their friends and their family, and then be recognized and rewarded by being able to progress, get promotion, put more money in their pockets, make a difference to their families, and make a difference to these islands. And that's what learning and development and education has to be about. It's about improving the country and the economic well-being of the country. So thank you so much for having me on today. And I've really welcomed all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners and our viewers. And remember to click on our Facebook page, like and share, and see you next time on the panel. Good night.